大家好我今天讲肯定会用英语，同时用中文要是有些人听不懂吧，就 Zoom 上给我送个 chat 面前就举手吧，好吧？反正这是我讲的考医学院我自己的一个过程，和我这个过程中学了些东西，什么东西？首先讲讲我自己吧。第一，我是现在 McGill 的医学生，我马上要进入第2年了。这个对我自己起的。好，对，我现在是2年级，我是 Ottawa 大学读的本科，我读的叫 Translation Molecular Medicine。说实话，其实就是一个生化。啊、我也是申请了4年，所以我从大3我就一直开始申请。我大4读完了，我用了2年，那时候是工作同时做研究，但是还是一直申请。第4次终于申请被录取了。我总共面试了6次，Casper 考了9次。要是我一会儿会讲 Casper 是哪一种考试，但是这种东西是非常难的。and MCAT 我只考了1次，第一次考了250分，但是我这个分儿也不是特别好，我一会儿会讲为啥。看吧。好，嗯，So，想当一个哪种医生，怎么申请？首先，至少在加拿大，我们都是推荐先读完本科。为啥呢？好多医学院，特别是安省的医学院，他们除了1、2、3个学校吧，他们都要求你读完你的本科才允许申请。现在好多人都是读完了研究生，就是要是硕士，要是博士，才去申请。为啥呢？因为现在就是实在是要求太高了。就是读完了本科还是读完了研究生吧，再开始申请医学。申请完了吧，要是真的被录取了，你再读4年、3年到4年的医学，读完了再去申请住院医，这些位置倒是少。所以要是有些人觉得，哎，我们为啥缺医生呢？那也不一定是因为医学院的位置少，但是就是因为住院医的位置特别少，所以医学院多加也不一定人能申请上他们所要的专科。最后，住院医学完了还是培训完了一定的年，再去专门考医师的这个考试，这个过程大概能用10年到15年，看你想当哪个专科。所以家庭医生最简单的，至少需要10年的学习培训。要是想当一个什么外科吧，普外也就是13年，再做一些培训，那再学的更细，那不是就15年的学习了吗？对，申请加拿大，嗯，对，就是从读本科一直到当了医师，嗯，至少10年。加拿大医学院现在是什么情况呢？我们加拿大总共有18所医学院，我下一个屏幕会让你们看一下，总共大概每年录取了7%到11%，这是看各个学校的有几个座位，请坐，请坐。现在新录取的学生现在年龄越来越大了。我刚开始申请时候，大概也就22岁吧，就是刚读完本科可以直接被录取了。现在大部分都是23到25岁。我录取的时候我已经24了。我现在好多同学们，他们都是读完了本科，都已经开始工作了几年，还是读完了他们研究生再回来申请。为啥呢？就是因为第一次试，他们就根本就没收到面试，就真是没法跟别人比。7%到11%的这个录取。还有一个是啥呢？我以前讲过，就是好多人都已经读研究生了嘛，百分之 25以上现在都是读完了硕士，10%现在长得越来越多了，他们都已经读完了博士才去申请医学，所以这方面跟国内其实跟别的国家一点不像，好多地方都是想要年轻点的人去申请医学院，他们当医生可以当的时间长点，加拿大是相反的，这是一年的这个申请的路吧，所以就是这是要是今年想申请，这都应该都已经开始了。反正就是你读本科的时候，一直到申请的八月份，申请年的八月份，你就是考 MCAT 和 Casper，准备你的材料，去准备你的 CV、resume，找推荐信，这些都呃必须准备好了。申请的这个点呢，它就是看各个学校。Memorial 吧，就是纽芬兰的那个医学院，它应该是加拿大最早的，它是8月27号今年就必须把材料全送进去。最晚的应该就是 McGill，是11月1号吧。反正所以就是你得看好各个学校的要求，什么时候必须把你的材料送进去。这个完了吧？得等，这等到大概1月初到2月底，他可以送面试通知。这也是看各个学校，他们有时候会给你2周去准备面试，这不是很长时间。有一些学校他们就是早早就告诉你，等到3月底才面试。不管咋样，面试完了，最后决定有时候才是明年的5月中，所以你这一年不是基本上就啥也干不了了吗？这是安省的每个学校的要求，我最上头估计被砍掉了。但是就是从左边学校 MCAT、Casper、GPA 平均和 CV，最后是我的英语叫 special consideration，就是有些更应该就是有些特殊的要考虑的。反正让各个人先读一下，你可以看他们觉得申请的这些他们各个学校的要求看着还比较低吧。我也加进来了今年录取的这个平均，所以你可以看从多大开始申请的 GPA 也就3.6，录取的是3.95。McMaster、Cars、Casper 平均这些学校都是这回事儿，所以说也不是反对你申请吧，但是有时候就是实在是觉得你不是，也就是说你也能拿到面试都已经很强了，最后被录取呢还得更强。对，For my English speakers out there, I put up the averages of the admitted and what it took to apply. And you can see a very big discrepancy. So even if you aren't discouraged from applying, what you actually end up with is something much higher, much more intense than what you started out with. 你也可以看最右边，这也是他们的要求。好多学校他们现在都是要求你还写一个 essay，你写几个文章，这是有时候是500字、750字，就是说你为啥想申请医学院？你告诉我们一下，你有什么经验？你有什么做过的？为啥我们应该录取你？A lot of schools now also require essays that describe why do you want to apply to medical school? What experience do you have that makes you worth admitting into the school? As if the grades weren't enough, as if the tests weren't enough. They're asking for more. 这是省外的学校对安省学生，所以你也可以看好最右边好多学校，他们都是爱选省内的学生。作为一个省外学生，你已经位置都已经少了很多。This is the list for out of province applicants if you're from Ontario. You can already see in the right side that a lot of these schools have in province preferences. So if you're out of province, you are very limited and you have higher standards to fight for. 省外的学生，你看他们要求都已经比省内的要求 高一些了。又一次，这是他们录取的。You can see the final stats for people who are admitted. IP is in province, OP is out of province. You can already see there's a big difference. And once again, the grades are remarkably high. Manitoba, for example, out of province, 4.5. That's the maximum GPA you can get. They're basically asking for 100% on your grades. 我画出来的这个红色的是啥呢？这是这几所学校，这3所基本上不会录取省外的。Saskatchewan、Dalhousie 和 Memorial 今年从这3个学校 ，Saskatchewan 录取了应该是5个省外的 ，Dalhousie 0 ，Memorial 我光知道有1个。So for the ones highlighted in red, Saskatchewan only took 5 out of province out of 108. Dalhousie and Memorial, they took 0 and 1 respectively. So you can see you have to consider which schools you want to apply to if you're out of province. 好吧，要是觉得还想申请吧，要是觉得成绩够好了，考过就是考试学校里头考试都成绩够高，下一步就是 MCAT。So if you decide that your grades are high enough, the next step is the MCAT. MCAT 我这次用英语讲，就是因为这个更是为学生。This is an 8-hour test. You have 4 categories. You have chemistry / physics. You have CARS, which is critical English, basically. You have biology and biochemistry, and then you have psychology and sociology. Your score is based off a percentile, so there is no guarantee that you will get a 90%. And each category is ranked individually. Your score is only valid for 5 years. So when I said that I got a 520 overall in the MCAT, I had a 132 in chemistry and physics, which is the highest you can get. Yay me. But I had a 127 in CARS, and that eliminated me from McMaster. That eliminated me almost for McGill. That eliminated me from a lot of out-of-province schools like Manitoba. Biology, biochemistry, 131, or 130, psychology, sociology, 131. So these 3 qualified me for applying to other schools. But because of my 127 CARS, I got limited. And that's why I say even if you have a very high overall score, if you look back at the table, you can see Calgary asked specifically for CARS. McMaster asked specifically for CARS. Western asked that each section has, so it might not mean everything. This is the MCAT average scores. You can see that you basically need about a 515 to be competitive in Canada. This puts you at about 90%. You have to be in the top 10% of test takers each year, and that's comparing with the US as well. So there's no guarantee that you will be able to do that well. That being said, if you still want to do it, after university year 2, so after second year, a lot of people in the science majors, they'll have taken most of the courses related to the MCAT. So if you're taking biochemistry, if you're taking even engineering, you will have general chemistry, organic chemistry, physics. You will have English, you will have probably a psychology class somewhere. This is probably the best time to take the MCAT, in my opinion, because your course material is still in your head, which means you haven't lost a lot of the things, but you also aren't starting to study from nothing. You're only allowed 7 attempts in your lifetime. That might look like a very big number, but if you take it twice in 1 year, that's already a third of your chances gone. And that decreases with every step. More and more people will also apply with every year. So you have to get really good, really fast. And it requires a lot of studying. I recommend you take time off to study. So what I did was I took the entire summer off of year 2, which perfectly was COVID. So I had a choice to work. I had a job offer, but instead I took 2 months studying full-time of MCAT. And I mean 8 to 10-hour days, nonstop. By the end, my parents didn't even see me for like 2 days at a time, apart from eating and sleeping. My other tips that I have, study hard and long. Cramming will not get you a good score. I tried 2 months. That is the absolute minimum I would recommend to anyone because it hurt to study by the end of it. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll study a little bit throughout the year, especially if, I don't know what grade you guys are, but if you're not yet in your first or second year of university, study for this along the way because a lot of your classes will overlap. You can always just like look, hey, this concept belongs on the MCAT eventually, or I know this table is going to be on the MCAT. I will remember it even after my exam. I also recommend when you actually start studying, take practice tests routinely to test your progress and to see if you actually understand what the questions are looking for. The American Association of Medical Colleges, who makes the MCAT, the AAMC, they have 4 practice tests available for like $35 each. I recommend buying all of them because $120 ultimately for 3 tests maybe at least gives you 3 chances to help understand where is your progress, what areas are you lacking. Do you even know that you'll be able to take the full 8 hours of test? Because it is a long time. You're sitting in front of a computer for 8 hours. Yes, try and simulate actual testing conditions. Have a snack, a water bottle beside you and your computer, and that's it. Close the door. 家长千万别打扰学生，这时候啊，这个就是因为考试中你不能送水果，你不能问他们想不想喝东西啊。For my students, look for resources to help you study. There are free and paid ones for everybody's budget. Khan Academy had a really good free one, but back when I used it. Jack Weston's are, I think they give 1 or 2 free questions a day. Other resources exist. There are probably a bunch more that are paid. I bought books for a very cheap price of $100, and that probably got me through 90% of my studying. They helped a lot because these are made by companies who are designed to understand the MCAT. I recommend Kaplan. Others will recommend Princeton. You'll hear a bunch of names. At the end of the day, exam crackers, whatever, they're all designed to help you study. UWorld also has excellent questions. They're designed in the same structure as the MCAT. So if you're looking for more questions, if you're someone like me who prefers studying through failing and redoing things until you get it, UWorld was great. It is expensive, I will not lie, but I paid probably $1,000 total for the exam to take one time. You do it over and over and over again, it's just going to cost more. So you might as well make your first and second attempts your best. And don't be afraid to take the test more than once. I know I said I only took it once, but I have friends who took it 3 times. I have a friend who took it 5 times. Why? Because it took that long for them to understand what it took to get a good score. And if you don't have a good score the first time or the second time, you always do have a third time. Just don't be afraid to redo it because the more you do it, the better you will get at it as well. Okay, that was the MCAT. Let's see, any questions? There is a question on Zoom. I am figuring this out. Where's my chat box? Okay, you answered them. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now about the Casper. This test has to be done every year, unlike the MCAT. And like I said before, I have done it 9 times. It is very infuriating. I have scored all 4 quartiles from worst to best, and I still cannot tell you exactly how to do it, but I will offer my best. So the Casper is taken every year. You can only take it once per year. So you have to study well for it. It is an ethical situation test. So what do we mean by this? Ethical situation tests instead of the MCAT or instead of your like school exams where you have to memorize things and write down concepts and apply those concepts. This instead is they give you a situation and they're testing how you solve the problem basically. But these problems aren't always black and white. They'll often have multiple correct answers. In fact, they'll probably have all correct answers. The question is, how do you explain your answer and how do you tell the judge, the person that's evaluating your answer, why it is the best possible answer compared to everyone else? Again, This is also scored based on other test takers. This one's slightly better because it's only people who are taking it that year or taking it that day. So your score can vary wildly depending on who takes it with you. But at the end of the day, it is still competitive. So even if you do well, there's no guarantee that you will get a high score, because if everyone does well, you just have to be better. These are all the types of Casper questions I have encountered over the year, several years. You have scenarios. So these are conflicts in a team. Your friend got bad news and you have to tell them, you have to console them, help them out. Someone you know has been dishonest, whether it's a classmate who's cheated on a test, a paper, maybe it's, your friend who has been taking some things from work, someone who has been, I don't know, doing something else a little sketchy. How do you respond to that? A classmate friend has not been coping well. Maybe they've had a stressor in life. Someone close to them is sick. How do you comfort them? Your superior at work, your manager has given you a very difficult task, sometimes even an impossible task. How do you respond to them? Do you say yes? Do you say no? What do you do? Someone is asking you to bend the rules, so it's not doing something right, but you're not doing something illegal yet. How do you respond to them? And of course, decision-making for an organization or a large group with differing opinions. One question that I got, I will put the slides online, so don't worry about photos of this. Decision-making, for example, the ones that I got, somebody in the city wants to open a new homeless shelter behind a very rich neighborhood. There are people who don't want that idea. There are people who like that idea. How do you respond to them? And the question types that they will ask. After each scenario, you'll be given 3 questions. 2 or 3 questions actually now. One of the question types, how would you approach the issue? So how do you solve the problem? Would your answer change if you were given more information that wasn't presented in the original scenario? For example, you would maybe for the homeless shelter option, they would say, oh, would your answer change if, there was a better location that just was more expensive for the city? Would that change your answer? Whether it applies to your original answer or not is irrelevant. You have to put something down. And the last question is almost always describe a time or describe an experience of your own, which you did X, Y, Z. You showed leadership, you took negative criticism. They want to test your soft skills. Describe an experience that you've had which makes you stand out from other people. And you only have 5 minutes for those 3 questions, whether it's typed or in video format. They are testing for these 10 competencies. I will put the slide, so I don't want you to read through all of them, but understand that each of these should probably be mentioned somewhat explicitly at some point in your answers. And if you're not in the mindset yet of explaining yourself, explaining your experiences, or describing, how do I solve a problem? How do I talk to people? This is worth looking at. My Casper tips. Typing speed should be at least 80 words per minute. Monkeytyping.com. Good stuff. Any type tester, you have to be able to type out your answers fast, because 5 minutes for 3 questions, that gives you 1.5 minutes to type out a big paragraph describing how do you answer this person? If this person says yes, what do they do? If this person says no, what happens? How do I answer, another colleague? How do I explain myself to my boss? You have to put all of that in 1.5 minutes. Describe a time when you did this. So you have to explain, what was the problem that you encountered yourself? What was your job? How did you actually solve it? What is a lesson? What is the takeaway that you got that would make you a good candidate for medical school? That has to fit in 2 minutes. And if you can't type that, your score will suffer. Prepare speaking in front of a camera. So I'm not doing a great job right now because I'm looking at a crowd and at my camera at the same time. But you want to be able to look at your camera. You want to be able to smile. You want to be able to also stop stuttering. A lot of young people, especially like us, will say, just pop out something random. You have to learn to get rid of those, whether you slow down, whether you practice some answers in advance, however you do it, get rid of the liaison words in your sentence. Get rid of the likes, the ums, the ahs. It's even harder if you do it in a second language. So in my 9 times, I did it in both English and French, and I can assure you the second language is going to be much harder. The first language was hard to begin with, but you have to practice to get over it. My third tip, and this is probably the most important one, is to learn structure for each type of question. So you have to quickly identify what is the problem? What is the key factors in the problem? Who do you have to talk to first? Who do you have to talk to second? What is the biggest issue that you have to address before anything else? The opinions, courses of action. Is there anything that would stop the ideal scenario from going? And then, of course, you have to mention that you're taking ongoing feedback. So this all has to fit if you're typing your answer in the first 30 seconds, which is quite hard. If you're talking, if you're doing a video answer, you have to make sure that you address each and every one of these points in a logical order, because by the time you talk into the second minute, they will forget about you. For personal experience, I have found that the STAR, LTR, whatever you call it, method has worked well. So the S stands for situation. What is the problem? Basically, this first point. T, your task. What is exactly that you had to do to fix the problem? A is the action. How did you actually go about it? Who did you talk to first? Second, how many people did you talk to? I did not put the rest of the STAR in the PowerPoint, but I will share it after. The R is the result. What was the actual consequence? What happened at the end after you had done your actions? And the L, the T, the R, those all stand for basically the same thing. It's a lesson, a takeaway. Going forward, if you encounter a future situation, or once you're a doctor, how will the experience that you discussed affect the way you see people in the future? So if I had to give a really good example, that's terrible. I worked in a hospital for a very long time, and I talked about a lot of experiences there. One of them was addressing a patient who was not very cooperative with the other staff. So situation, I had a person who did not want to talk to anyone else except for me. Task, what was my job? To make them like everybody else. Very hard. Action, I spent time with them. I learned to talk to them. I learned who they were. I asked them what were their worries. Why were they angry? Not exactly in that way, and the result was they eventually got friendlier. They listened to their doctor. They listened to their nurse. They learned to establish a rapport with other people. And my takeaway, my lesson from all of that is that in the future, when I am a doctor myself and that I have an angry patient, my first instinct will not be to judge someone. That was very roughly a scenario that I got. You, without a doubt, will get a lot of similar experience questions. And you have to be able to describe something from your CV that you can apply into that question. The last point, compromising with short-term and long-term. I put this in because a lot of questions will give you a short-term problem, but you also have to say, how will you prevent this problem from happening again in your scenario? Or if they ask you an experience question like mine, I had to explain to the person that, we're not all here to hurt you. We are trying to help you, and you have to tell us everything. You have to be honest with us if you want the help. And that is a long-term answer as well, because the next time they come into the hospital, they will know how to talk to people. They will know what to expect from the people treating them. So you have to incorporate all of this into every single answer to every single question that you get on the Casper. And this is why people don't always score well. This is why I did not score well. It took me 8 tries to figure this out. The last thing I recommend is learning about current issues that affect Canadians. Immigration, homelessness, food insecurity, inflation. All of these are words that you've probably heard before, but you have to learn what it means for Canada, what it means for people's health. For example, homelessness should be pretty obvious. If you don't have a home, you're probably going to get sick more often. But what about inflation? How does that affect people's health? I suggest reading up on these. And of course, I've mentioned it throughout everything so far, but review your resume, review your CV, and think of possible scenarios to write about. I did not think of my example for the STAR before I came into this room. I literally just thought it up as I was going over this slide. One of the reasons why is because I recently looked over my resume. I'm constantly looking over things for when I have to apply next time to a job to a shadowing position, even to a volunteering position. Sometimes they will ask for a CV. Sometimes in an interview, they will just ask you about, oh, I see this interesting thing on your resume. Can you tell me more about it? And you have to not only just talk about what you did. When I was volunteering in a hospital, I didn't just say hi to people. I actually had to talk to patients. I had to help them around. I had to describe to them what was going on. I had to interpret with no medical experience whatsoever. So they were 100% trusting me. But if you don't know your resume well, you will not be able to tell a story like that. You'll only be able to tell them, oh, I just did 1, 2, 3. That brings me to my next area of discussion, the resume, the CV, ABS. If you're in Ontario, it's the autobiographical sketch. What this is basically is every single activity that you have done since the age of 16 for Ontario, at least. Most schools will ask that you put everything that you've done after you turned 18 or started university. The reason being, we don't want to see something from high school that you did once. We don't want to see that you volunteered at a food bank when you're 17 and then use it on an application 5 years later. That's not relevant. What we want to see is, are you able to balance grades? Are you able to balance being at home? Are you able to balance being independent? Well, unless you're living at home for university, but that's a side topic. They want to see, are you able to work? Are you able to volunteer? Are you able to do extracurriculars, whether it's hobbies with a school club, a group, or outside of school? Do you do research? This is very, very important for medical schools. If you have 0 on your research, you will probably not get a lot of interviews unless you've done spectacularly in the first 3. Awards and accomplishments. Have you done anything that's significant? And this does not mean that you have to be competing. Competitions are great, but they're not everything. You can put down how many languages you know. Did you recently run a 5K? One of my classmates has their pilot's license, and that's all under awards and accomplishments. So it does not have to be, oh, I won a piano competition. I, went to a different country to present. No, it can be something, anything really that you've done in life, as long as it means something to you and as long as you are able to tell a story out of it. And they really leave it up to you. Do you play a lot of sports, but you don't play it with a team or a group? Are you really passionate about a side business that you're helping out with, but you're not actually really working for them? Do you have any sort of personal things in your life? For example, you've been taking care of a family member, or maybe you are doing something for the community that isn't really a volunteer experience, but you want to talk about it. That all goes in the other. And that's why there are 6 sections for when you apply with any CV, because if any one of these is average, you can still tell your own story. You can still stand out through another one of these. But conversely, if you are really, really lacking in any one of these, your chances of an interview go down. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't succeed in my first 2 years. I had a lot of volunteer. I had a lot of extracurriculars. I had 1, 2 research things, but I didn't have a lot of work. And my parents at the time, they meant well, but they were like, oh, maybe you should focus on getting more research, getting more stuff in. And I said, no, I wanted to work. And so I worked and did research at the same time. Not the best answer, but you have to be able to build your resume in all of these components and yet at the same time, make yourself stand out through any one of them. And of course, each school has their own format. For example, in the OMSAS ABS itself, so this is specifically for Ontario schools, you want to be able to fill at least 24 out of 32 spots that they give you. This means out of 6 sections, each section should have at least 3, with a maximum of 6 in each. Because what happens is Ottawa, they only look at the top 3 for each category. So you can fill out 18 and that's all they will look at. Even if you were great, even if you'd had 5 really good work experiences, only 3 of them will show up here. And if you have 0 on any category, that will be very bad for a school like Ottawa, who doesn't look at anything else past the top 3. Again, you want to have very different kinds of activities. Sports, hobbies, work, volunteering. I will show my own ABS at the end of this presentation so you can see what kinds of things that I filled out. But I had all of these and I had more, and that still didn't qualify me in my first 3 years of applying to Ontario schools. I had to fight for a lot of interviews. Once again, have at least 2 activities for each category. If you're missing in one, that's okay. Hopefully you're doing better in another one, but you can't leave it empty no matter what. And if one item can fill multiple boxes, I highly recommend you spread them out as long as you have enough time commitments. So one more thing is that you don't want to put something that you did one day for. Ideally, you want to put something that you've put a decent amount of hours into because everything is calculated by hours. So for example, my highlight in my application, I volunteer at the hospital for 5 years. I worked at the hospital for 3 years. That's combined 8 years of experience in working in clinical places. And I only filled out 2 of these. But I made them very big on my application. Did it work? I don't know. I didn't judge my own application. But by the end of my 4th application cycle, I had filled out 24. All of them had some hours. They had over 100 hours for a lot of them. And that just shows you have to commit to something. You have to be able to balance your grades, your work, your volunteering, your research, and also your hobbies, all in life. 所以家长，你要是觉得孩子太辛苦了，你要是觉得孩子不一定不是完全用他的时间，就想想下次你不用完全满足这个要求，这个32个位置，表上填32个位置，但是至少你孩子应该有一个故事可讲的。要是他们是运动员，要是他们爱听乐、爱弹琴，这都可以。我小时候其实我没怎么喜欢音乐，我特别不喜欢弹钢琴。但是我是啥呢？从高中开始我就一直参加课外活动。我上了大学之后，我的这些课外活动我一直跟下去。高中有的这个 club，我大学我也参加同样的，所以我最后写到我这个 CV 上头。我填表的时候，我可以写上我总共做了7年。我从高中开始，一直到大4，我就最后当了一个什么 club president，这些他们也爱看，因为是啥呢？这是我一直能跟下去，他们能看，这不是因为光是为了填他们这个表，这不是因为了申请医学院我就干，这是因为我真的感兴趣，这是我爱干，他们也能看出来。Tips for the resume CV. I've mentioned a lot so far, but this is in a condensed form. Avoid putting in short-term entries. Once again, more hours is better. I put probably something that had 500 hours. What does that show? I'm not doing it for fun. I wouldn't do something for 500 hours if I didn't like it. Ultimately, grades are number 1, and everything else that you do is number 2. If you don't have the grades to back it up, your application is going to get rejected by a robot before anyone even reads it. However, if you do have the grades for it, you have to put a lot of attention into your extracurriculars as well. 所以家长要是觉得孩子成绩不够高，下次就想一想，孩子不一定要考满分，但是至少能考得够高，90分也就可以。后来的全是看他们学校外头的活动，要是他们是运动，要是你觉得他们就是嘻嘻哈哈玩的，要是他们能写下来，面试时候讲他们自己的故事，必须鼓励他。Focus on telling your story. So I just said that in Chinese as well. But no matter what you do in life, you always want to be able to tell why are you doing things? Why are you special out of 5,000 applicants fighting for 100 spots? Why should they give it to you? My story was that because I'd worked so long and I'd actually worked in emergency, for people who aren't familiar with that, it sucks. The hours are terrible. People scream at you all the time. And yet I liked it. And that's why they should allow me into medical school, because I've already done it. So I know what it's like. And I know that I will like it even if the worst comes to happen, even if people die in front of me. I will still like my job. And I guess they liked that story, so they took me. Clinical work and volunteering is not a must. I worked a lot in the hospital. I have friends who worked in engineering. I had somebody who built fighter jets for 5 years as my classmate. They worked for Lockheed Martin. You do not have to do anything in a hospital. You don't have to do stuff with a doctor to make it applicable to medical school. Like my friend who got the pilot's license, she did it because she was fun. She wants to do something with that in medical school. I don't know how, but as long as you can explain it, this goes. And of course, get some research experience while you can. If you're in an undergrad that does research in 3rd and 4th year, great. That's basically your ticket in. If you aren't doing an undergrad who has research built in, like engineering, I have a friend who did arts as their undergrad. They found research their own way, and they still got into medical school. They're my classmate. They're doing pretty well. So as long as you can fill out the points that I mentioned on this, as long as you can fill out the 6 sections, it does not matter how you do it. So do it the way you like. I will talk very quickly about essays because essays, honestly, they're not that complicated. Each of them are different length. I recommend you start early with your essays. The earlier you start writing, the more you can think about it, the earlier you can choose your experiences to write about. Find 3 or more people to read and edit your essays. I found someone who was an English major, so they wrote a lot of stuff, and none of it was related to medicine. I didn't care. They know how to write. I found someone who was a current medical student that offered to read it because they said, oh, this is what they might be looking for in medical school. This is what they want to see when they're reading their 20th essay after 2 glasses of wine. This is what will make you stand out. And then my last person was someone who maybe is close to you, who knows what experience you're writing about, and they can be like, oh, what if you can write about this part of your experience instead of this? It might unlock something that you didn't think about when you were writing your essay yourself. But give them enough time to edit your essay, so start early. Write about what is personal to you. You want to choose something that you can tell a very good story with, not just the one time that you helped someone and then you forgot about it until you came time to write essay. No, you want something that has stuck with you, something that you thought about at night. When I wrote my essays, I chose somebody who was extremely happy that I was there, that they call themselves lucky that I was there because I could help them. Now, I didn't think too hard about it at the time, but after looking at the essay requirements, I realized this was a great story to tell. On the other side, write about what is personal to you. So if you think you have a better story, something that changed your life, you went on a vacation and you saw something that you remember to this day, that is also something that you can write about. Practice writing. So a lot of you in science degrees, in engineering degrees, don't write a lot. And I'm aware because I've done that, or I haven't done a lot of writing during that. But you want to practice writing these essays so that when it comes time, you can easily write something out. You can edit it as you like, and you aren't stuck there looking around at others writing the essays and feeling like you're defeated. You want to be able to write well as well. You don't want to just be able to write quickly. And for that, you need practice. Reference CanMeds as you write and highlight where you show the skills. So for those of you who aren't familiar with CanMeds, this is a website that you can go on. I'm doing good on time. This is a website that you can go on, and it will tell you exactly what a lot of schools are looking for in physicians, whether they say it or not. So I did not put CanMeds in here, but basically they have a couple of components kind of similar to Casper, where they'll ask, explain how you're demonstrating leadership, explain how you're demonstrating teamwork, explain how you're being an expert. Have you learned your stuff? And you want to try and put that into your essays. You don't have to fit all of them into one essay, but you want to be able to fit 2 or 3. And if you write multiple essays, fit 2 or 3 more different ones. Finally, by your 3rd essay, you should be able to fit everything. Reference letters. Each school will ask for 2 to 3 reference letters. These writers should have known you in different capacities. So work manager, research supervisor, volunteer supervisor, sports coach. One of my friends put their pastor from church. Someone else put the old lady down the street that they had been working for 2 years. It doesn't matter who writes for you. It's just that you want them to be different. You don't want 3 work managers because that doesn't tell you how you are outside of work. You don't want to put 2 research supervisors because, they know that you can study well, but do they know how you're going to react with people? They want to see diversity in your reference letters so that they know what type of person you are. And ideally, you can find someone who can write a good reference letter for you. They should be able to write well about you in detail. So if you haven't worked much with your manager, might not be the best person to ask. Try a colleague who's been working beside you and who's a little older than you. If you haven't seen your research supervisor as much, the PhD person at the very top, ask the master's student or the PhD student who has been working with you every day, because they will know a lot more about what you've been doing, about your character, about how you get over problems compared to the research supervisor who's like, yeah, they did great. They wrote a paper for me. Doesn't mean much. And of course, as always, tips. Once again, ask people who have known you for a while. Don't ask somebody that you've worked with 6 months ago twice, and then all of a sudden you come back asking. They won't remember who you are. They won't remember what you did. Always tell the people in advance that you want a reference letter out of them. I asked my work manager 3 months in advance for a letter, and she still wrote it the very last day after I wrote 3 reminder emails. You do not want to find someone like that, and you certainly don't want to find someone like that 2 weeks before the deadline. Send a reminder email with what you've done while working with that person and any key points that you want them to write in your reference letter. So for the Ontario applications, they have a form that describes exactly what they want the reference to write about you. For example, they want to ask, what is their strong point? Is there anything that they should work on? How would you describe their leadership? How would you describe their teamwork? How would you describe a time that they didn't do so well? So they will tell you everything that they want. Other schools will just say, write me a letter, 1 page, go. And so if the person's not used to writing a reference letter, you might have to remind them what you did. You might have to remind them what you want them to write about. Say if you really worked with them in terms of helping the poor, you want to say, I am very compassionate. I have, gone above and beyond for people a couple of times because I genuinely want to help. You want to see that in a reference letter. This one is a little more controversial, but I put it in anyways. Offer to write them a draft if you need to. When you ask someone, I tend to ask them, do you have time to write a letter? If not, I can write a draft for you that you can edit and sign before sending out. This makes sure that you're not actually violating any rules because you're not allowed to write your own reference letters technically. But at the same time, if they're too busy, if they don't know how to write letters, this is your way to ensure that you get a good reference letter out of someone. And the last year I applied, I wrote 5 out of my 7 reference letters that I needed. Well, I wrote drafts and they edited it. Why? Because the people that I asked knew me really well. They would definitely write me a good letter. It's just that some of them didn't know how to write a reference letter. It was their first time writing one for medical school. For other people, they were on vacation until 2 weeks before the deadline. I can't expect them to write a good reference letter in 1.5 weeks and then send it before the deadline. So I wrote them a draft. They looked at it while they were on the beach and they signed it and they sent it. Sometimes you have to do what you have to, but always, always, always tell them in advance so that they aren't surprised by it. Finally, if you're lucky enough to get to the interview, if you have an interview, there are 2 formats. There's a panel, which is a standard 3 or 2 to 4 people sit in front of you and they ask you questions. There's also something new called the multiple mini interview. This was designed by McMaster. It is multiple stations where every single station they have a different interviewer. They will ask you something different. This is designed to test your reasoning, your attitudes, your response to conflicts, your response to stress, other soft skills. Do you break under pressure? Do you get mad? Do you try and argue with the interviewer? It has happened. Don't do it. There are multiple question types as well. So you can ask personal questions like, tell me about a time. Everybody loves hearing about those. There are policy questions. For example, what do you think about legalizing marijuana? What do you think about abortion? What do you think about medical assistance in dying? Scenario questions like Casper, they will give you something. Maybe it will be actors. Maybe it will just be a paragraph, but they will test how would you theoretically respond to this? McGill and a couple of other schools are special. They have something called a role play station where you are given a role similar to a Casper scenario, and you will have to answer an actor while an interviewer is judging you from the side. They will test how do you respond, and some of these actors will get angry at you. Some of these actors will cry in front of you. Some of them will refuse to answer your questions, and they will test how do you respond to that because that will happen in real life. There are some descriptive questions where it will literally just be a mystery. Some of them will give you a map. Some of them will give you a math question, and they will see how you answer things. It is very hard to predict what you will get. Regardless, every school has their own preferred type of interview. They have their own length of interview, and they have things that they're looking for ideally. For example, some schools will look really at how you respond to scenarios and the role plays. Other schools will look at your problem solving. Other schools will really just ask you, what research have you done in the last year? And that is your entire interview for 20 minutes. It is the biggest part of the process. Vaughn Jiao is here. Memorial looks, I think, 50% is interview and 50% is pre-interview. So depending on how you react to the interview, this really might be what makes your application stand out, or might be what puts a very good interview close to the bottom. McGill looks 100% at the interview. Western looks 2/3 at the interview. So you cannot afford to mess this up, which means you have to prepare formats for answering interview questions. You have to know how to answer the questions. Like Casper before, prepare structure for your personal questions. For policies, you have to know what you're talking about. You have to give a well thought out answer, even if your thinking time is 10 seconds. You have to know the school's mission. I always recommend this. Why? Because a lot of them will say what they're looking for. They say they want a diverse applicant panel. What does that mean? Diverse in experiences, diverse in race, diverse in whatever. Sometimes it will say, we want people who are well-rounded, who are researchers, who are prepared to tackle tomorrow's questions. So that means they're heavy on research. They will tell you that. Talk to current students. This might be hard, but a lot of places will have medical school panels. They will have students come on these panels to answer questions. So feel free to ask anything. A lot of people, like myself, are affiliated with different organizations. And if you get in contact with them, all of you are free to contact me, by the way, at the end. English, Chinese, VC, email, whatever, I will put it through. Feel free to ask questions about what it's like applying, what it's like in medical school. You might decide that's not the right choice for you. Know your resume and CV well, because they will 100% ask you questions about these. Like Casper, you want to have stories for each experience on your resume. Even the smallest things that you put on can be asked. One of my interviewers asked me, what was my favorite type of music? Ooh, what do I answer? So you have to have something that maybe can link to your resume, or maybe anything that has a story behind it. And of course, you have to practice. Practice with other applicants. Come time, there are Discord groups, there are Facebook groups. There are so many places where applicants will ask to practice with other people. Join them. I spent almost every night on a call with someone else who I didn't know. We were just throwing questions back and forth, testing each other's answers. I learned a lot from seeing how other people answer, especially people who have done the interview before. Finding someone who is skilled in public speaking is best to help you practice. People who do a lot of talks, people who work in an industry where you have to make presentations like marketing, they know how to sell products. You need to be able to sell yourself. So they should know how to do that. They can help you with that. Practice longitudinally. What I say is don't start preparing, a month before the interview, if they even give you that much time. As soon as you get the interview offer, you want to start looking for people to practice with. You want to start looking for people who will know what a good interview looks like so that you can practice with them, because a lot of them will be busy around the first week of January. You might not find them immediately. And of course, dress professionally and consider your setup. I don't mean you have to wear a suit. You don't have to wear anything super fancy, but at least a nice shirt. A lot of interviews are done on Zoom now, so at least a nice top half. And if you're in person, consider your pants as well. And of course, practice with the settings that you will be using the day of the interview. So for those of you on Zoom, I have a microphone in my hand. This is exactly what I used for the interviews because my voice stands out better with one of these. This was $50. I still use it to this day. My voice comes out very clearly compared to if I use a laptop microphone. Some interviewers will not like if you use earbuds. Some of them will not like big headphones. I personally wouldn't take the risk and use those if it means I pay a little bit extra for something like this that I will be able to use a long time as well. So always consider the most realistic situation and try to simulate it when you do your practices. That has been a recurring theme. OK，回到中文了，这是有一些题，我是好多家长都喜欢问，所以我就提了一个常见的问题：还想学医，应该不应该选一个好一点的大学？说白了，没有一个叫好大学。多大是挺有名的，但是多大判的分儿，大部分都是挺低的。好多学生都叫唤，因为他们都说啊，我达不到90分儿，我达不到80分儿，为啥呢？学校就难，教授判的分儿低，没办法。我去沃大的时候，他们不让教授扣分儿，所以我每一门课都是85以上。我跟多大的同学说的时候，他们说啊，我们教授要是考得太好了，那专门就每个人扣5分儿。所以你就必须考虑一下上哪个大学，对吧？是选专业时候不一定需要窝大，但是至少你看好你的专业，他们教授多严重，学现在的学生大概平均多高，考虑一下。要是怕孩子高中大一的这个成绩不太好了，那咋办？其实好多学校要是读了整个一个本科，好多都是会把最低的1、2门课，他们把分儿就扣掉了。所以要是第一年分儿不太好，就是适应了还没完全适应呢，这自己生活，还是冬天实在是出了什么事儿，平均没达到想要的平均，没问题。学校也会考虑这些。要是看最后2年、最后3年的分数，还是读了一个硕士，那时候的分数好，那这也是能成一个故事，这也不一定是坏事。还有一个呢，这是我自己父母也是我跟他们吵过这个架。参加的课外活动觉得太多了，还是没意思，对申请医学没啥关系的，应该继续干吗？我自己觉得还是应该继续干，因为这是看孩子兴趣，学生他们不一定是必须完全朝着医学走，像我这时候。我我高中时候和我大一，我就是特别爱玩机器人。我高中就是参加一个 robotics，最后啥呢？我也没想到是直接是跟申请医学有关的，但是因为我特别喜欢，我最后高中毕业的时候，我一门 computer science 的课我都没上过，但是最后拿到了他们的奖，就是因为我参加课外活动。我大一有些人估计要是没参加这个机器人这个玩意儿呢，我肯定就有些关系我就没有了。说白了，他们也不一定是能帮多少忙吧，但是至少也是可以也是一个减压方法。我要是真的觉得学习太累了，我去干一些我喜欢的，同时可以写到我的简历上，这是最好的。好， 最后还有几分钟，我就快快的讲一下美国。美国现在是咋回事儿？美国有两种学位学医的，一个叫 MD，这就是跟加拿大一样的，我们叫 you know medicine doctor，还有一个叫 DO，这就是 Doctor of Osteopathy，这是一个美国的特殊。我也不能说哪个比哪个好吧，但是要是想申请美国的医学院，再回加拿大读住院医学，我还是推荐 MD，因为这就是更像我们加拿大这边儿的。申请美国啥呢？他们要求稍微低一点儿，因为学校多。这说明你要是申请美国的学校，你要是考不到515的分数 MCAT，要是稍微低了一点儿，那美国你肯定还有戏。但是他们是啥呢？他们是滚动的录取，这说明啥呢？你就是必须早早的申请。他们今年都已经太晚了，因为他们5月底就开始申请，他们的申请表就已经开了。把这个第一个申请表送进去了之后，好多学校都是会送他们我们英语叫 secondary essay，这就是各个学校会直接让学生写他们的一些小文，说为啥想来我们学校，还是同样那种题，你做了什么研究，你的课外活动你选一个给我们讲个故事，但是这些都是2周之内必须送回到学校。送不到呢，他们就觉得你不感兴趣，他们就不会录取了。所以最早要是申请美国，有时候就是五月底把那个第一个表送进去，6月底就把学校的这个文章都写完了送回去了，有可能9月份就收到了面试通知，10月份就被录取了。也是啥呢？你不管你的申请表有多好，要是送的太晚了，这些美国学校有可能他们位置都已经满了，就没你的位了，就得等明年。还有一点，有些美国学校，他们就是跟加拿大这些学校有什么合同，有什么，嗯，他们这个 partnership，他们就是会把加拿大学生当成州外的，不一定当成国外的。这是啥呢？可以省你的学费，这也是位置稍微多一点，但是你得看好是哪些学校会有这个。最后一道题呢，就是大部分的美国学校申请美国学校的人，他们都会在美国继续学下这个这个住院医学。为啥呢？你一离开了加拿大，回来申请我们这头的住院医学，就把你当成国外学生了。你要是去美国医学院，想再回加拿大，你就给你的位置就少多了。这也是给学生说，if you want to apply to a medical school in the U.S. and you want to come back for Canadian residency, you will be considered international. The spots available to you will be a lot less. It is a lot easier to complete your residency in the US, complete your licensing exam in the US, and then come back and do the licensing exam in Canada because there's a different path. There's more openings for you there. 应该考虑美国学校的。第一，首先学费还是贵几倍。像我们加拿大最贵的学费吧，就是渥太华大学，1年2万8。美国我最低的听说的还是5万美元，所以还是贵1倍半吧。当然，有些加拿大银行他们也是会允许你贷款去美国学校允许贷款，也有些奖学金，但是这得看好了。还有一个，像我前一个说的，考完了这个美国的医师考试，还是更容易回加拿大，比申请加拿大的住院医学容易一些。好多申请不上加拿大的医学院 都是去，大部分都是去美国的，因为他们就是同时申请。这当然说明啥呢？你必须推荐信多要，你的成绩必须高高的，你的这些课外活动也都必须写好，你的简历每给每一所学校都写一遍，这是很费劲儿的。我试过，有些加拿大学校他们还是认一些美国学校，所以你要是回来想就是已经进了他们医学院，想回加拿大实习一下子，这当然对你申请住院医学的时候还是好一些，因为他们会认识你的名字，这些加拿大学校更可能给你一个位置。当然，这不是一定的，there's no guarantees。这是美国、英国、爱尔兰、澳大利亚，好多学生也是选这些国家去学医的。他们录取也比加拿大的容易一些，因为好多申请这些国家的想学医的都是直接从高中出来，所以你读完本科，你肯定经验已经比他们多了几倍，申请面试时候都应该简单一些。但是他们医学院好多都是5年的，所以你得多待。住院医学也是也是一点麻烦，因为是啥呢？国外学生好多地方不允许国外学生申请他们的住院医学，因为他们想保证他们自己国家还有这些医生。所以有时候申请时候，要是实在是回不来加拿大，好多就是去申请美国的住院医学。我的推荐是啥呢？我的建议就是要是真的想申请这些学校，每个夏天回加拿大做研究，跟在哪个教授底下去哪个大学，特别是去医学院的这些实验室，给他们干干，还是跟他们实习，所以他们至少你能保持这个关系，该申请住院医学的时候，他们会记着你的名字。面试时候你们有一些可以谈的。要是这不做呢，就很不容易拿到这个国外的这些位置。学费也是贵，但是有些加拿大银行也是会允许你贷款的。当然，他们学费还是比美国稍微便宜一些，但是你在别的国家，你在国外住呢，所以这也得考虑一下子。要是你知道你想当家庭医生，想学儿童科、普内科、普外科，其实现在也好了一些。回加拿大都是挺有戏的。要是想申请一些更 competitive 这些专科呢，像眼外科、那麻醉科，那你基本上就没啥戏了。还好多申请不上加拿大的医学院，也是去国外的学校，所以你要是觉得成绩实在是达不到加拿大学校的要求，那你可以考虑啊，这没改，这又是写美国，但是有些英国学校我们也是这头一承认。当然了，你还是必须每年回来，你还是必须保持一种关系，你还得让他们认识你的名字。要是真的这没有，那你申请住院医学的时候，嗯，不会给你留个位置。好，这基本上就讲完了。这是今年我们这个申请住院医学的这个表，大概就告诉你有几个位置，有几个人申请和最后有哪些录取的。这当然是国外的，所以这包括美国、包括英国、包括澳大利亚、法国也加进来了。其他的国家基本上申请，你看家庭医生是最多的，Family Medicine quota offer 216，对吧？Quota filled 230，quota vacant 6%。所以想当家庭医生非常好，普内科也非常好，50%以上的这个可能。但是你要是想申请妇科，0.5%， 从国外可以回到加拿大申请，I don't know，皮肤科0.2%能从别的国家回到加拿大，这又是国外的，这就是他们每一个国外的医学生申请到哪个专科，所以你还是看家庭医生都是挺好的，普内科还好，这别看，对，儿科也有，精神科也有很多，但是你看麻醉科、皮肤科这些更 competitive 的，基本上就没多少位置，对吧？最后，这更是对我们学生 Caribbean schools，你基本上要是能教他们，给他们交学费，他们就会录取。但是说实话，我是千万千万你不能申请，不应该申请，别考虑。我现在有一个同学，他是在一个 Caribbean school，他是学呢，本来说是应该是4年，学4年，他现在要学6年，因为他的学校有一个要求，考不过考不过美国的 Step One，你就是必须重学1年，再给他们交1年的学费。所以他本来想着，哎，20万，20万加币还行吧？那他肯定最后要交30万，他还是申请不上加拿大的住院医学，他还是准备去美国，所以他们回加拿大的特别难，基本上没有一个加拿大学校会承认这个 Caribbean School 的这些他们这个 degree，所以就别想，don't think about it。好，that's it。要是有什么，要是有什么问题，现在问。Casper. Do you want the honest answer or the thing I recommend? Okay. So the honest answer, I thought to myself that for every time I took it, regardless of whatever score I got, I would always try and make the next test better than my last one. And I was very discouraged because one time I got 4th quartile and I said, well, that's the best I can get now. There's no way I'm going to get better than this. And I was right. I did not get better for the next year. But I got a score that was close enough so that I wasn't completely discouraged when it came time to applying. Now, the answer I recommend is that you have to be able to de-stress. You have to have something in your life, no matter what it is, that if you don't get a good score, even if you do get a good score, but it's not the score that you wanted, you have to be able to react to it. You have to be able to get over it and continue applying because sometimes it's just pure dumb luck. My 3rd year, I had some of the best stats I could possibly imagine, and I got one interview and I failed it and I got waitlisted. I got 4th quartile Casper. My MCAT was great. I had basically all the same things that I had on my CV for my next application, but just nothing worked. And you just have to accept that sometimes it's luck. Again, do you want the honest answer or the right answer? Uh, The honest answer, I think a lot of it is luck. Because as Wang Peizhong 教授 can tell you, these reviewers are looking at several people at a time, right? Your essay writing style is subjective. Your CV is subjective. Someone might be looking for a very special thing, or they might look at the first applicant and be like, wow, this person's great. And then everyone behind them just sucks in comparison. And that is no fault of your own. That is just pure dumb luck. I had, in my opinion, I had great essays. My CV looked really good from a work and volunteer standpoint, but maybe the person was looking for research at U of T, and I never got an interview there once. But I landed at McGill, so I don't know what they're looking for.
I was wondering about Upwork.
Yep.
What specific firm do you recommend on YouTube? Because I mean, like, this is like working in a lab or like working in a hospital versus like working at a company.
Yeah.
You can like that Starbucks.
Yeah. So in terms of this, I don't think there's any type of work that's better than the other. I have classmates, like I mentioned, I had a friend who worked at Lockheed Martin in engineering. I have a friend right now who's doing bartending. It pays their bills. They have a lot of encounters with other people. They have stories to tell because if you're working at a, like say a pub or a bar or even at Starbucks, you're going to have angry people come up to you for reasons you think are stupid. But you're going to have to tell them, you're going to have to de-escalate a situation. You're going to have to propose a resolution to them, right? And that's a story you can write about your work. So ultimately, as long as you're able to do it and it doesn't impact your grades, I'd say whatever. I just worked in a hospital because I live close to one and it opened me a lot of other doors. But it's not the end all be all. Mm. So if I go back to my table of schools, for out of province, I landed here. I speak French, and that is what got me an application with McGill. That being said, a lot of the essays that I wrote were related to the Chinese community. And I don't think you need to speak a language in order to relate to a community. For example, a lot of applicants, they'll write about, you know, I grew up in a Black neighborhood or I grew up in a poor neighborhood. That has no language. So I don't say the language alone will help, but if you want to incorporate your language competencies into, for example, an award, an accomplishment, or an experience that you want to tell about, I think it will certainly help. So one of the things that I wrote on the application, and also what Cao 老师 and Wang 教授 were able to talk a lot about in my reference letters, because I speak Chinese and English, I was able to do a lot of things with CNIW that, you know, reach populations that aren't always addressed by the government. Chinese speakers who don't understand well English. When I was volunteering at the hospital, I had a story about where I had to interpret for a Mandarin speaker who didn't understand the hospital system here. They pulled out their credit card instead of their health card. That's not what we do here in Canada, but you have to be able to explain that in a language they can understand. So I didn't give you a yes, no answer, but hopefully that does answer your question. I live in Montreal, in the middle of Quebec, so yes. I use it a lot. That being said, your French doesn't have to be very good. So even if you took French in high school and you know a basic way around, that will be good enough to apply to McGill. I didn't put the Quebec school specifically here because a lot of them tend to only select for in province as well. And their tolerance for out of province is like 1 out of 250. And you need to know very, very good French for those schools. So I didn't put Laval, Sherbrooke, and UDM. 家长有问题吗？来问来问。
从家长的角度问几个实际的问题，就是你当初是可能也是拿到很多 offer 吧，是怎么选择这个渥太华大学的？然后我去到这个哪一个医学院？我知道这个渥太华是安省嘛，然后哪个是魁省的，然后你 转省，然后是不是一个特别大的一个 barrier？就是介绍多一点这个具体的。
好。对，申请大学的时候，我最想要的就是 McMaster Health Science，那个专业就是3年半，and then 大概60%以上的都是可以进医学的，所以我当然那个没拿到，所以我就剩下的 offer 我就看了一下，我就觉得，因为我那时候高中已经学好了法语，我就说渥太华大学他们有选择可以上，就是一半儿的你的课可以用法语上，所以我就觉得我还是想保持这个语言水平，我就去他们那儿，他们也给的奖学金挺多的，所以我就说便宜一些，是顺便便宜一些，可以保持语言水平，我也就选上了。好多人会推荐上大学时候就是找一个小一点的专业，因为你可以认识教授，他们给你写推荐信的时候，他们会更理解你想要什么，去找这种研究这个机会吧。申请他们实验室都好一些。其他就是说申请一个有名的大学，就是为啥呢？因为他们实验室多，他们好多教授都是很有名的，你就是可以申请他们这些实验室发表文章，也是会帮你申请。所以最后呢，我觉得就是还有一点就是我是非常自由的，所以我申请的时候我就想着住得远了，对我自己来说也没啥大问题，父母也没说啥。但是要是有些学生他们这是第一次出家门儿，这是会给他们找一些麻烦吧，还是就是觉得实在是学习，就是高中时候学习太累了，不一定就是离开家里可以自己生活吧。那这也是得跟学生讨论，但是我觉得最后每个专业都可以申请医学，不管你学什么。我有一个同学，他是学了文化，读了一个硕士，都是学 art history，对吧？他最后今年，当然他比我大2岁，但是他还是申请上了麦吉尔医学院，有的是。对，
另外看，做这些事情都是用有机不能单纯的 ability 人手，所以在这个意义上来讲，这区别的事情，区别的事情，差别不是像你想象的这么大。
对
有些家长以为必须到医院跟医生做，并不是这
也
个。
不要。
你要做不好，反而你没法挣。其实有时早推荐真不是很早，有些家长很早，家庭医生那个推荐信的 amazing 的时候，太忙了，看我这病人还挺好，就是这么简单，就没有经验，觉得他医生嘛，实际并不是这个，并不是。还有一个呢，就是上学，我昨天跟一个很优秀的中学生一起吃饭，他今年上大学，他是全国的那个 Brain B 的第1名，世界第2名，他就选的温尼派大学和曼托克大学。
对，
他不是他别的大学他没能力，他考虑家庭负担，他不愿意给家里带来负担，他就报了2个地方。后来我跟他说呢，你去曼托克大学比温尼派大学还要好一点点的，至少稍微高一点，而且就是那个大夫教授机会都一点，就是这样好。所以这些东西都是没有绝对的对付。
是，也有一点呢，就是这也是答你第2道问题吧。我从我大2开始，我就想着，要是想申请魁省学校吧，他们就是因为挺爱选省内的，所以我上渥太华大学，但是还是在 Cniw 住着，所以我还是在魁北克租房子，所以我学完了，我就在那儿工作了1年，我就可以算成他们的省内的申请的学生了。对，有些其他的学校呢，他们就说你要是去他们的大学，像我记得应该是 Saskatchewan 还是 Alberta，你要是去他们大学，但是你夏天回到安省回家了，你就算不到他们省内的。但是你要是夏天在那儿待着，不管是上班做志愿还是啥其他的，那你就可以选他们就等于他们省内的学生了。所以这就是各个学校都是 这方面都得考虑一下子。但是跟学生和家长说好了，我觉得没有啥对的，没有啥错的。
哦，我有一个问题，我有一个问题呢是什么呢？就是说现在有的学生呢，他还是蛮喜欢 research，不光是说 focus on clinical work，那有的那个 degree 是 MD 和 PhD combine，你个人感觉怎么样？
我个人觉得吧，我没申请，因为我觉得我还是想读完了医学，我还是直接想申请这个住院医学，因为光学医的就是4年，你加上这个 PhD，那就是总共7年，还得读3年的博士，所以这就说明你要是那年被录取了，你7年后才能毕业。你的朋友、同学们，有些都要是当了家庭医生，有些都已经开始工作了，对吧？生活就跟他们不一样了。这也是当然了，七年医学加博士，再学住院医学，你想吧，都已经提前读了一个本科4年、7年、5年，你这16年，你就是上学培训吧。所以要是真的，这就是看自己，对，这就是看自己真的感兴趣吗？这是真的你的 passion 吗？当然，我也有一些同学，他们就是爱做研究，他们以后就是想申请哪个专科但是也是同时想开他们自己的实验室去做这种研究，学计算机。那他们觉得啊，那多学3年那有啥？对他们来说没关系。当然，这是个人的考虑。对，问，请问。好。
然后你刚才说到是这个，如果加拿大的大学就是这个想考医学院的时候会比较困难的时候，也可以同时报美国的医学院，所以那个可能录取率还比加拿大医学院还高一些。那这个数据是您从这个有一些数据支持，还是说您就是身边的这些朋友啊、同学这看到的呢？
这数据有的是，因为确实啥呢？你要是去美国大学吧，要是真的考上了，在那儿读本科读4年，你就可以相当于他们州内的学生了，所以申请他们一些医学院也会简单一些，就像申请加拿大的这种选省内的一样的。我自己也是考大学，想了一想，我觉得最后首先学费太高了，我觉得也没必要，因为我最后总是想回加拿大学医的，所以我就觉得我还不如就在这儿读一个本科最后申请渥太华大学，我就在魁省住了嘛，我就可以当他们的省内的学生。要是学生觉得去美国待在美国都不是大毛病，我觉得还是应该考虑一下去美国学校，因为要是真的去一个好美国大学，像哈佛去他们 MIT 这种特别有名的吧，也是会申请美国学校的时候，也是会有一定的帮助。因为美国学校更看这种大学的这个名字，加拿大就没有这种 bias 这种 preference。嗯，对，反正最后一点说，要是家里有钱，我的推荐就是多申请2下，最后被录取了，从那里头再重新选一遍。因为你要是没被录取呢，那不这就说白了，这就讲废话了。 Maybe go for it. Sure.
But if you program what we've done the same way.
That is a long time ago. To give you context, I did a lot of extracurriculars in high school, and I would not change that. I had a part-time job in high school. I would not change that. Something that I might have changed. Yeah, I don't know. I always felt like it was luck back then to get into McMaster Health Science as well. No, I applied and I did not get in. And I thought that was luck because I had people read over my essays again. And when it came time, I looked at the people who did get in and I said, oh, they have an older brother at McMaster. Oh, they have a parent who works with someone at McMaster. I don't think I would have changed anything. My grades were good enough as well. Obviously, I was 90, 93, 94-ish in high school. So not the highest, but enough for every single university at the time. And that would not have changed even if I brought it up 5% more. So I think I wouldn't change anything from high school. If anything, I would change stuff from university. So instead of, I said I took a summer off for the MCAT, I think I would have preferred to take longer. So study throughout the year and instead get that early work experience, get those connections in early. One of the reasons why I didn't do it was because one, it was COVID. So it was brand freaking new and nobody knew what to do with it. My job offer was in the hospital. My parents were nervous. My grandparents were nervous. And so I didn't take it. I think had I actually listened to myself, I would have taken it because working back then, it would have given me so much more to write about. It would have given me so much more experience, connections that I probably could have made use of. But I also did well in the MCAT, so take it as you wish. I think ultimately the path that you take in high school and university, as long as you aren't wasting too much of your time, as long as you're being productive with something, whether it's sports, whether it's hobbies, whether it's, volunteering, anything, as long as you enjoy it, I don't think you have to change anything.
Another connections are really important nowadays. Networking.
Okay.
Yeah, any tips for that?
Networking.
Yeah.
I think the way that I network the best, I don't like throwing my card out there and just being like, hey, contact me. I find that I tend to get a lot of networking through really just going out and doing experiences. My parents routinely berate me for this, but I don't actually like talking to people. I don't like putting myself out there. And I'm working to change that a little bit, but it's coming. So in the meantime, what I do is I do my work really well. I make myself stand out that way. I make good friends with people. And hopefully not hopefully, but I try and make friends with the people who have a lot of connections. And so they'll introduce me eventually by extension. And that's how I've gotten the majority of my contacts that way. Yeah, it's not the best answer, but I find it's the way that I don't have nervous breakdowns at night. No, 我没见到。No, 8:30。好，
在上学的大年级，
对，
那你将来有没有想说你这个career path 怎么走？是做residential 这个还是说这个当初这方面有这些？
对，so 因为我以前就在急诊上过班，我觉得我挺喜欢的。我做志愿的时候，我去了每一个部的他们这种病人房，我就特别不喜欢这种普内科，我就不喜欢这个外科。后来等人恢复了，再等2周再去诊所去看他们，我就特别等不及。我就是想一下子看到他们好了。OK，对，我就是没有这种耐心去等着。 去做这种长途的，所以我觉得我申请家庭医生也不是最好的。我也有一点，我觉得我自己，因为我不怕死，我不怕血这一方面，所以我就觉得我很适合急诊。我就喜欢 emergency，对对，所以我以后就准备申请，对，嗯。对，我也是觉得，因为他们也是挺动手的，但是不是像那种外科的，都是一直供着药8个小时，开一点刀，再重新缝起来。我觉得对我就不适合这种生活，所以我也就没我考虑了一下，但是我觉得我不想申请外科的。嗯，
孩子有个追求，这个医学挺好，但是我发现呢，有些家长给孩子不是太大，就是就必须得进医院。如果家长这个情况，确实是没有必要。
对，其实我现在觉得，对，其实当家庭医生也是很好的，因为至少安省你可以学好多我们叫 Plus One，就是你可以学哪个专科的最简单的，诊所里头就可以看那些病人了。所以有些学家庭医生，他们就再多读2年，同时读妇科，同时读急诊，所以他们就可以同时在医院里上班。不想上了，那就回他们诊所去看，去看他们家庭医生的人。其他的就是专门开他们这个诊所，就是为了什么 sports medicine，就是这些运动员受伤了，他们看着，他们可以，他们的这个生活，他们可以多控制一下，因为他们诊所就哪天开，他们固定了，那病人只有那一天去看他们，所以他们生活他们也很满意。嗯，
啊，非常辛苦的，今天是。
对对对，
你这个 video 咱可以放在
video 啊，可以，对。
这没事儿啊。你正好给我发一个，真是有个 paper，你可以 sponsor 一下。